Sorry about that, guys. My phone died. But my point is that we forget. We forget the miracles. We forget how the Red Sea was parted. We forget how the staff hit the rock and water flowed from it. We forget the manna that God provided in the desert. And I don't know about you, but I have those instances as well in my personal life. And there are, I think they're called stones of remembrance. And it's kind of just the concept of when God comes through in your life and there are miracles that are happening in your life before you move on to the next thing and just kind of keep going through life, that you have these stones that you put down as a way for you to remember what God has done for you to remember where you have come from, for you to remember that this moment that you're sitting in right now that is so blessed and that is so amazing is not something that was just like automatic, that there's a whole path and experiences that God has provided for you in your life that have allowed you to be where you are. And so it's just so easy. And it's just like, wow, this is literally a tale as old as time. To be ungrateful, to be disobedient, and to be putting yourselves and your family in a position where, you know, God has to deal with you. And so today, like I said, it was just so sombering because it is kind of sandwiched between these other psalms that are just, you know, just crying out for comfort and relief. But it was just so beautiful. It's been beautiful kind of floating through this particular book because David is, and whoever else, because I don't think that he wrote every single one. I think there was like a psalm that was by Solomon in here, and then, you know, choir master and some other people, some other names. So I don't think that every single chapter is by David, but there is such a vulnerability and a humility in the crying out and just being like, Lord, please, like, have mercy, comfort me, avenge me, restore me, like all of these things. And in the midst of this, it was just this reminder in chapter 78, because right by the time you get to the end of the chapter, he kind of gets into how he winds up having mercy on them, and choosing David to be his servant, I guess as a form of redemption for Israel. And so, yeah, it's just, I'm looking and it's like, you know, he gave his people over to the sword and vented his wrath on his heritage. Fire devoured their young men, and their young women had no marriage song. The priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. Like, all of these things are written as if they are just like the worst thing ever, and they are, when you really think about it, even though it sounds kind of simple. But to be like, wow, like none of your young women are married, fire devouring your young men, that could just be like death or murder. Like, these are things that we see, especially even in our community, like as Black people, where it's like, oh man, you know, women aren't getting married, or there's a single mother epidemic, or, you know, they're just killing our young men in the streets and da 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 da. Like, all of these things are literally outcomes of disobedience. And they have been for like a really, really, really long time. And then when we think about just testing and being rebellious, like, my goodness, I just remember like not caring about anything in terms of my rebellious stage, where it's just like, nope, I don't care, like I'm gonna do what I want to do, da 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 da. So it's not hard for me to understand what this looks like. But when you take that attitude and you put it over an entire people, it's like, whoa. And I can say for me, at least in the community that I grew up in, family wise as well, that wasn't abnormal. Like, it wasn't like, oh, she's being rebellious. Maybe in like a church space it was, but by and large it was just like just a general attitude, right? And it's just like, oh wow, like that was also a general attitude back in the day. But yeah, by the end of the chapter, he kind of turns it around a little bit. But yeah, it was a tough it was a tough chapter. So it just had me thinking, and I was just like, man, like, Lord, please help us. Please help us to be humble. Please help us to not test you and put ourselves in positions where, you know, you need to deal with us harshly. And so, like I said, I just wanted to encourage y'all in that. It has been just a comforting set of devotionals. I think initially the original set, it was Psalms 34 through 37, which was like very comforting, but just kind of continuing on and going through the story and listening to the supplications, I was just like, oh wow, this is deep. But I just was just so reminded of my past and my past attitudes and our community, just looking around and having different conversations and being like, wow, like, how are we here? Like, what is actually going on? And then actually listening to this particular chapter and being like, man, that sounds so familiar. Like, Lord, please uproot any of that out of my heart. Like, I do not want to have that perspective when it comes to this walk into this life. And so hopefully that's just encouraging to you, and you can take a moment whenever you see this to just examine your heart and really think, like, am I testing God? Am I just looking for God to give me things and give me things and give me things, and I'm forgetting and I'm not putting out the stones of remembrance that mark all the things that God has already done? And instead of walking in obedience, I'm focusing and having like a rebellious spirit. And it's a walk. It takes a while. And it takes humility to surrender and say, okay, Lord, you show me the parts of my heart that need to be corrected and uprooted and shifted. And really, it's just a process that only God can take you through, if I'm being for real. Like, somebody could tell you, hey, you need to change this, this, and this, and this. You may not be receptive. And that's definitely happened to me. There were some things that I needed to get rid of out of my life, and the vessel that was telling it to me, I was like, oh yeah, absolutely not. And maybe within 2 years or so, the Holy Spirit was like, hey sis, so no, you didn't want to receive it from that person, but you do need to tighten up. You need to get rid of that stuff. And I was just like, oh, yes, sir. Like, okay. And it was just like the messenger, I just was not receptive to the messenger. But it just goes to show you, though, that if your heart is in a position of humility and surrender to God, though, sometimes God will send people, and we may not be guaranteed to listen to those people. But then it's like God sends people, but he doesn't necessarily send people because like somehow he can't communicate directly to you. And so that was kind of what it was in my case, where God was directly talking to me like, okay, cool. You didn't listen when that person said it because you didn't like the messenger. That's fine. But I'm here to tell you that this needs to get gone. And so if you're taking time and you're examining things and the Holy Spirit is prompting you to look into some stuff and get rid of some stuff and just be for real about it, please, 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 please do it, because I don't want any of us to get to this point with God where God is like, you're done. Like, let's go. You're out of here, killing all your youth. You know what I mean? Like, and the rest of you guys that I don't kill, you're just going to live a life full of terror. Like, oof. No, thank you. So I will be praying for you guys. And please share if you have had some moments like that in your life where God has just been like, you are testing me and this is not okay. And you've kind of moved through it and have been sanctified through those heart postures. Please share below. But yeah, have a great rest of your day or rest of your evening, whenever it is that you guys are watching this. And we'll talk again soon. Bye.